Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Wattpad Read React Review, where I read through the different books within my Wattpad library and react to them and give my opinion on how I like the stories. Now I know that last time I created a video, I last stopped off on reading The Sky is Everywhere. Now I read the first 3 chapters and we saw exactly what the story was about there, but let me just give a quick review in case you guys didn't watch the previous video. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick recap. So we know that the story is set in a dystopian future. It mentions that ever since England passed the Firstborn Act, families are only allowed 1 child, and illegally born seconds, like Kaya, are property of the government. Raised her whole life in the control center and knowing little of the outside world, Kaya's only hope for a better future is to excel in the trials, a mysterious test that all seconds must take when they turn 16. But when Kaya meets Rowan, a boy from the outside, she learns that the trials may not be what she thought. Rowan wants to topple the CC and set seconds free, but he needs help. The more she starts to fall for him, and the closer they get to the truth, the more Kaya realizes that she may have to risk everything to be free, even her life. So yeah. So that's the preface. But again, we read the first 3 chapters and we're introduced to a couple characters. We've been introduced to Kaya and some of her friends, Priya and Tammy. We learned that Priya and Tammy aren't secondborns, but rather they're firstborns, but that they ended up within the CC because of accidents. Tammy, her family died in a fire and she had no one to take her in, so she was sent to the CC. And Priya, her family died in an accident, and the same thing. No one wanted to take her in, so she was sent to the CC. But at the end of chapter 1, we see that we're introduced to another character, another main character, Rowan. And I can say that the way he was introduced was kind of it was funny, and in my mind suspicious, because there Kaya is minding her own business and Rowan comes up and he holds on to her hand from the other side of the fence. That alone is suspect right there. Sorry if you guys heard that. There was a large truck passing outside. But yeah, we met Rowan at the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 was basically them having a discussion. We got some information from Rowan. We see that he is a member of a group called Beyond. Does he mention anything here? Where is it? Let me see. Oh yes, he mentions, yeah, one of the first question that he asks her is, what do you know about the trials? And I think that pretty much is to instill some doubt into her. And that pretty much, sets it sets an outcome for what takes place later on in the story, I suspect. Because as far as Kaya knows, the trials are supposed to be a way for her to escape the CC. Not just her, but all the secondborns as well. Because if it is she can take part in this test and, pass, then she'll be allowed a place in society. But what Rowan comes to her telling her now is that don't trust the trials, that there's something suspicious about it, which I have to say I agree with him. There is something obviously suspicious about the trials, but I'll give my opinion on that a little later on, after I just give you guys a quick rundown on what has been happening within the story so far. So chapter 2 is just where they meet And they have a brief discussion. Rowan asks her a couple of questions, and Kaya goes her way, Rowan goes his way. I mean, at the start here, it seems that Kaya is suspicious of Rowan because, as far as she knows, people only show up at the CC, at the facility, to probably stare at the second-borns and make fun of them, because they have been taught that, people on the outside, they don't value any second-borns, that they're unwanted, that they're worthless, and so on. But that's just what they've been taught. So now with Rowan showing up here, he is putting doubt in Kaya's mind as to whether anything that she has learned for her whole life is rather true, if the trials are to be trusted, if it is indeed that people on the outside, if they actually care about second-borns, and so on. So chapter 3, it's basically, let me see, what is it about? Yes. So chapter 3 just mentions that Kaya goes back to the fence again. She meets Rowan, and they have another discussion. And so far, that's up to where I stopped the last time. But to be honest, I waited for the other chapters to be published first, chapters 4 to 7, and I've read them, and it's pretty much the same thing. It's all about Kaya meeting Rowan at the fence, them having a discussion, and then them going their separate ways. Kaya going back to her room, Rowan going back to wherever he goes. And it's kind of repetitive, to be honest, because the same thing happens in chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, where they meet and they just talk. Again, I would not have an issue with this if it is that the conversations that the two of them were having, if it was important, I'd have to say. If it is that the conversations revealed information about the characters and also about the world and the society in which they are living in, but none of that is really mentioned from the discussions that they're having. Yeah. None of that is really mentioned from the chapters or from the conversations that they've had. What information we do get, it's very, very limited. The information that Rowan gives Kaya about the trials, all he mentions is that there's something suspicious about the trials. He mentions that they, as in Beyond, managed to get in contact with someone from the outside who is a second born, who actually managed to got through the trials, and he had a life on the outside. But before they could actually get the chance to speak to him properly and for him to give any information, that he was killed. So that's all the information we have about the trials. One of the other conversations that they had, Kaya and Ron met, and Kaya asks him about, how does he choose his clothes, and they go on to discuss clothes and the color blue, and that was it. Another conversation, Rowan gives her chocolate. She likes it, but then she's suspicious of it as to why he would give it to her. And she initially thinking that it was a bribe for her to give him information about the trials, and so on. But we see that, in my opinion, the conversations that they have, it's really shallow conversations. It's unimportant. Now I understand that Rowan's supposed to be Kaya's love interest. It's mentioned in the synopsis of the story that Kaya falls for him. So obviously they are supposed to fall in love with one another. But at the same time, I think that the author has pretty much the entire book to build the relationship between Rowan and Kaya. So the fact that they are just meeting up and having these random conversations at the start of the novel, it kind of feels that the relationship between them it's being somewhat rushed. I think that it would be better if the conversation that they had it served to reveal more information about the characters within the novel, as well as about the society and the world that they live in. Because so far, we don't know anything about anything much about Kaya's best friends, about her rivals, about the people running the CC, people working there, and we're given little to no information about Rowan himself. We know his name, Rowan Mason. We know that he's part of Beyond, and that he wants to free all secondborn. That's it. Now, there's no information given to us concerning Rowan's age. Now, I'm suspecting that Rowan is around the same age as Kaya. You know that Kaya is 16, so I'm guessing Rowan might probably be between 16 and 18, between that age group there. If they're going to be like love interests within a relationship. But that's pretty much all the information we know about Rowan. We don't know if he goes to school, if he works, if he has a family, if he has friends, what he does on the outside with his free time other than just coming to the CC. We aren't given any of that. I would love to see, even if it's another chapter of them just meeting and talking at defense, I'd like to see where they meet, and Kaya asks some actual deep questions that reveal information. Like she can ask him, does he have any family? Does he have any brothers or sisters? Does he go to school? Does he have friends? What it is like on the outside. Now, we know that Kaya, she doesn't know much about the outside, even though she has Tammy and Priya to give her some information. And she also has a couple books that she read. But it's mentioned that the information that the seconds are given, they aren't given much information about the outside world. So I would like to see where they have a discussion where Kaya actually asks some of those questions. What is it like on the outside? That way it'll give us some information regarding the rest of the world that they're living in. It would add to the story. Well, that's what I believe anyway. I don't know, you guys can let me know what you guys think down in the description. So yeah, I think that was it pretty much about where the story is so far. We know that Rowan, he wants to topple the CC, so he pretty much is asking Priya to give him some information so it can help them topple it. I don't exactly know how they're going to go about doing that, but that's what's mentioned. So I think this is where the story would probably pick up, because it's been 7 chapters so far, and Kaya is now coming to make a solid decision to assist Rowan, to give him the information to help him topple the CC, even though she doesn't know much herself either. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work out for them, but I'm guessing we'll be learning more in the future. Now, I'm just going to mention a couple things that I think would improve the story overall, improve the novel, because as it is, I think that the story is somewhat flat. The plot itself it's pretty good. I like it. The direction the story is going as well, it's okay. But I just think that it needs some definite improvement. one of the things I'd like to see improved is the dialogue. The dialogue between the characters, they need to reveal more information. I'd like to see also more of each of the characters. Like again, I said that I understand that Rowan and Kaya are supposed to be the two main characters, but I'd like to see some conversations between Kaya and her best friends as well, or Kaya and not really enemies, but the antagonist, other students within the CC, whether they are her friends or not. I'd like to see some interaction between the people who run the CC, either the cooks, the janitors, the security, the teachers. I'd like to see the interaction between different characters, but it doesn't have to be directly with Kaya, but it can be with other side characters. That will give us some indication as to how the world or people on the outside view the second born. Even though I know it's mentioned that the second born are basically taught that they're worthless, that nobody on the outside cares for them. It's mentioned so far. That's all it is. It hasn't been shown. And I think we all know this rule in writing where it mentions show, don't tell. So it would be a lot better to show some facts instead of simply mentioning it to one or two characters. Instead of the characters saying that they are taught that everybody outside hates them, you can show it. Show it through the interactions between people on the outside and interactions between those who are second born. One of the other things I'd like to see improved is the reasoning behind, I can say, some of this story. Because on its own, I think the plot, it could be an improvement because there is a big plot hole within the story. Now, it's mentioned that this is a dystopian society and that basically there aren't enough homes, there aren't enough jobs, there aren't enough food to support a large population. And that is why the government created the Firstborn Act, where they only allow one child per family. But then if a family has a second child, the government would then remove the second child from the family and then place them within an orphanage, pretty much, or a prison, because now the children, they are property of the government. Whoops. But that still doesn't solve the problem. The problem is overpopulation. Now, simply taking the children away from their parents and putting them within an orphanage, it doesn't decrease the size of the population. It just relocates them. And now, instead of the parents or the families having to take care of the child, the government now is put under greater economic strain because they have to put forth all the effort and monies to house, feed, clothe, educate all these children that they've been taken away from their families. And I mean, that doesn't make sense logically. Again, I think this is probably just an oversight. I did mention it in a comment before. I think it was mentioned within the first chapter where I made that same comment. And the author actually replied and said that it was pretty much like a deterrent. That if it is parents knew that their child was going to be taken away by the government, then it would deter them from having a second child. I understand that much. It is a deterrent, but at the same time now, even if it is that people still continue to have children, because the CC didn't seem like it was scarcely populated. It seemed like there were lots of people within the CC. So obviously the Firstborn Act isn't really serving to dissuade people from having another set of children. So what I think would fill that plot hole within the story right there. I think that instead of simply taking your children away and putting them in an orphanage, I would think that the government now would try to turn that into a situation where they can profit from it. So if it is that they took away any newborn child from a family, then they would now auction off that child to the highest bidder, to, let's say, families who probably want a child but couldn't have a child. So it's pretty much just like they're buying babies on the black market. So it's like the government has found a way to economize human trafficking and slavery. So if it is that they take away a baby from a family, they could then sell the baby off to another family, either locally or internationally, and that would earn them some revenue in return. And if it is that they find any other second-born children or any other children that were displaced like Tammy and Priya were, then they can then auction off those older children to, let's say, larger companies who are looking for indentured workforce. So if it is that, let's say, Tammy got into an accident, she was burned, and she had nowhere to go, so the government now takes her into the CC, and instead of simply housing her there for years, they auction her off to a company that is looking for cheap labor. So Tammy now belongs to that company where she lives and works within the company. The government benefits, the economy benefits, the private companies benefit, and that would be a more reasonable way to see how the government seeks to solve the problem of overpopulation, because it is exporting its any second-born children for a fund. It's exploiting them and it's exporting them. That would be a better explanation and a better direction for the story to go in. And if it is that I have a couple ideas I'd like to pitch out, but I think I'll leave that for another video. It would simply describe how I would make this story better. That's all. But yeah, guys, that is it for this video. I'd have to say, so far the story has been moving slow. I've listed some things that I didn't like about it, some things that I expect to see. I certainly think that the story is going to be picking up from now, from chapter 8, because at the end of chapter 7 here we see where Kaya is coming to terms with actually making a decision to help Rowan. And because of that, I think that the story is going to start picking up. The trials are about to begin, and we're going to actually get some information as to what those trials actually are. So I hope you guys like this video. Let me guys know your thoughts, ideas, if you agreed with me, if you don't agree with me. Let me know if you think I'm being too harsh with judging this story. I mean, surely I don't think so. I surely hope so. I hope I hope that I'm not being too harsh on the author by giving my own opinion here. Maybe I'm just expecting a bit more from stories and whatnot. I don't know. But yeah, guys, I'll be leaving a link down in the description where you can find the authors, where you can find my library, and also the author's homepage where you can check out other works that they have written. So this is it for me, guys. Until next time, peace.